If you're a wife who loves her husband but feels frustrated with him almost all the time lately, I want you to know that you're not alone and you're in the right place. Maybe little things are bothering you now more than they used to. Or maybe you feel like you're having the same conversations over and over again, only to be disappointed. Maybe you're starting to feel like you're becoming someone you don't even recognize, more critical, more irritable, and more distant. If that's you, I have some really good news. The problem may not be your marriage. It may not be you, and it might not be him. It might be something much simpler and much more fixable. Today, I'm going to show you what's underneath this dynamic, what most wives get wrong about it, and 4 powerful shifts that can help you feel more connected, more peaceful, and more hopeful again. Welcome to the Softening Into Love podcast. I'm your host, relationship coach Laura Amador, and I help wives restore connection, peace, and intimacy in their marriages. So let me ask you something. Have you noticed that the things your husband does wrong these days seem a lot bigger than they used to? Maybe 5 years ago, if he forgot something, yeah, it would annoy you. But now, if he forgets something, then it really disrupts how you feel and you're upset at him for hours, maybe even days. And then you beat yourself up and you ask yourself, why am I so angry? What's wrong with him? What's wrong with us? Or maybe I just picked the wrong person for me. What I see over and over with wives is that frustration doesn't come from one disappointing moment. It comes from years of accumulated disappointments, 100 little hurts, 100 little moments where you hoped for something different and your expectations went unmet. And then eventually something subtle happens within you. You're no longer emotionally responding to just the current situation. You're reacting to the emotional weight of all the situations and disappointments that came before it. If you're a wife who wants to feel close to your husband again, then this is an important distinction. Because once you understand what's actually happening, you can stop fighting the symptoms and start addressing the root cause. And that's exactly what we're going to do today. Let's start with the 4 signs that you've been carrying and dealing with disappointment and how to overcome that. Sign number 1 is that you're carrying too much. One of the saddest things I see is how many wives are trying to carry an entire marriage, an entire family, and sometimes an entire household on their backs. A wife recently told me, I'm exhausted all the time, and then I feel guilty for being exhausted and irritable. Maybe you can relate. You're the one keeping track of appointments and managing schedules, remembering birthdays, planning meals, paying bills, thinking ahead, solving the problems, and making sure that everybody else is okay. And somewhere along the way, you stopped asking yourself whether you're okay. Now, here's where it gets interesting. When you're depleted, the expectations that your husband doesn't meet often feel a lot bigger because you're running on empty. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack all day long. Then someone hands you one more thing. That extra item on its own might not be that heavy, but because you're already overloaded, it feels unbearable. That's what happens emotionally too. The forgotten errand feels deeply irritating because it isn't just a forgotten errand. It feels like he wasn't thinking of you and he forgot because he doesn't care. The missed opportunity to connect doesn't just feel like a missed opportunity, it feels like a rejection and like he didn't want to spend that time with you. Everything's landing on an exhausted heart. Now, here's the thing. Self-care is not selfish. Self-care is relationship care. When you take care of yourself, you're not abandoning your family. You're replenishing the woman who creates warmth, connection, and intimacy inside that family. So let me ask you something. When was the last time that you did something simply because it delighted you? Not because it was productive or because someone needed it, not because it was a check on your to-do list, but simply because it brought you joy. If you're struggling to answer that question, start there, because resentment grows in depletion, whereas connection grows in nourishment. Sign number 2 is that you've lost touch with what you really desire. The second thing I see is that many wives become experts in what they don't want and lose touch with what they really do want. For example, a wife might tell me, I don't want to have to remind him, or I don't want to do everything myself. I don't want to feel invisible. And of course she doesn't. Those feelings are real and valid. Yet underneath every complaint is usually a beautiful desire. And when we reconnect with that desire, everything changes. For example, underneath the statement that he never helps her is often the vulnerable desire, I'd love some help. Underneath the accusation that he never plans anything is often the desire to feel pursued. And underneath And underneath the complaint, "You never want to spend time with me anymore," is often a vulnerable, "I miss you." Can you feel the difference? One comes from accusation and frustration, while the other one comes from invitation and desire. And desire is powerful and inspiring. What I see so often is that many wives have spent years focusing on what's missing, so much so that they've forgotten how to speak the language of desire. One wife realized that she'd spent years telling her husband what she didn't like, but she almost never told him what would delight her. So she started small. Instead of talking about what wasn't happening, she started sharing what she would love. When it was morning, she said, "I'd love a cup of coffee." And then she was surprised and delighted when he made her a cappuccino just like she likes it, and even put a little heart in the foam. In the evening, when she'd said, "I'd love a glass of wine," she was surprised when he jumped in the car and drove down the road to get her wine. When she said, "I'd love a lazy Saturday morning," he postponed a home project so that they could hang out on the porch together. She started to feel a lot more taken care of and to see her husband as her hero, and something between them softened. Not because she or her husband suddenly became perfect, but because she reconnected with her own heart and started to express it. If you're a wife who wants to improve her marriage and to feel closer and more connected, this matters so much because your desires are often far more inspiring than any complaint ever could be. Sign number 3 is that you're protecting your heart instead of sharing it vulnerably. This one thing might be the most important. When disappointment has been around you for a long time, we naturally start protecting ourselves. We stop saying things like, "I miss you," "I'd love help," or "I love spending time with you." And instead, we become more guarded, more defensive, and more critical. And here's the hardest part. Most wives don't even realize that this is happening. Most wives do this unwittingly. They're trying to protect themselves from disappointment, but protection creates more distance and feeds the disappointment. One wife told me, "I don't even bother telling him about my day anymore." And my heart broke for her when she said that, because that's not peace, that's resignation. That's what happens when hope starts slipping away. One of the most powerful phrases you can practice is, "I can't." Not as a threat or as a manipulation, but just honesty. Something I learned was that whenever I was feeling disappointed, it was because an expectation that I had hadn't been met. And that often led to resentment. But now I know that whenever I feel resentful, it's an opportunity to take a look at my paper and everything that I've allowed onto my plate. And often, if I'm feeling resentful, there's often things on my plate that shouldn't be there. And so I can't is a way to honor that. As in, I can't host 10 people this weekend and do the laundry and not be resentful afterwards. Or maybe after a long day of working and taking care of the kids, you say, "I can't cook dinner tonight." In my experience, most husbands are happy to step up as the hero and either take over dinner or order pizza in for the kids. And sometimes "I can't" is just for your own knowledge, as in, I can't keep running at this pace. Another powerful and vulnerable phrase is, "I miss you." It's simple and vulnerable, authentic, and if you're anything like I was, it's true. Most wives are carrying enormous loneliness while talking almost exclusively about logistics. The marriage conversations become about chores, schedules, responsibilities, bills, kids, and problems. Meanwhile, the real longing goes unspoken. "I miss you. I miss us. I miss feeling close." Those are the vulnerable words that invite connection because they reveal your heart instead of protecting it and shielding him off. Sign number 4 is that you've started looking through the lens of what's missing. You may have become very skilled at noticing what's wrong, and honestly, that makes sense. If you've been hurt, your brain starts scanning for evidence that confirms the hurt. It starts collecting proof that things aren't changing, proof that you are alone, proof that you ought to be disappointed, and proof that there's big problems in your marriage. But here's the thing, whatever you focus on is what increases. If you buy a red car, suddenly you see red cars everywhere. Not because there are suddenly more red cars, but because your attention changed. And the same thing happens in a marriage when we start to focus on the negative things. One woman told me that when she was a young child, she was very shy. And she used to hate when people would say to her, "You don't really talk." Because guess what? Once they said that to her, she would completely shut down and not say a word afterwards. However, if people instead said, "You're so friendly," she would open up and feel like she could chat the rest of the day. So if we focus on negative things, we get more of the negative. However, if we flip that and focus on more positive things, we do get more positive things. It becomes a self fulfilling prophecy. So when you're focused on disappointments, that's what you're going to get more of. And eventually it's going to start feeling like that's all there is, but it isn't. A lot of wives are afraid to look through a lens of gratitude because they think that they'll just be brainwashing themselves into thinking things are better when they really aren't. However, what gratitude actually does is expands your perspective. It helps you see the whole picture. The husband who forgot something may also be the same husband who works really hard to support his family. The husband who frustrates you because he leaves dishes out all over the kitchen whenever he goes in may also be the husband who loves you and adores your children. The husband who disappoints you may also be the husband who's been trying to show you love in ways that you haven't been able to see or stop noticing. And when you begin looking for those things, something remarkable happens. You feel different, and the good starts multiplying. And when you feel different, you show up differently. What I wish every wife knew is this: the opposite of resentment isn't getting your husband to finally do everything right. The opposite of resentment is intimacy. So many wives are carrying the weight of trying to make their marriage work, of trying to fix everything, trying to manage outcomes, trying to create change, and it's painful, lonely, and exhausting. Real intimacy starts when you stop carrying the entire relationship by yourself. When you start taking care of yourself and pouring into your cup, when you start speaking your desires and sharing your vulnerability, and when you start seeing things through a lens of gratitude. Not because these things change him, although they often do, but because they change you. And when a wife reconnects with herself, something really beautiful happens. She becomes softer without becoming weaker, more peaceful without becoming passive, and more connected without needing to control or exhaust herself. And that's where transformation begins. You deserve to feel cherished, you deserve to feel connected, and you deserve to feel hopeful again. Now, this week's relationship experiment of the week is called the Evidence of Goodness Experiment. For the next 7 days, write down 3 things that you appreciate about your husband. They can be big or small. It might be a smile or a text or his work ethic, his sense of humor, how he is with the kids, whatever it is for you, because what you focus on increases. The goal here is to stop letting the problems become the entire story. And after a week, notice what shifts, not just in him, but in you. If this resonated with you, I have a free guide called 3 Steps to Reignite Connection that will help you to take the next step. You'll find the link to that in the description. And if you're a wife who wants personalized support, I'd love to help. My coaching is designed specifically for wives who want to create more connection, intimacy, peace, and partnership in their marriages. Women often come to me feeling exhausted, frustrated, disconnected, and hopeless. And together, I help them create a completely different experience of their marriage, one that feels lighter, warmer, and more connected. You don't have to figure this out alone. Small shifts create big transformations, and you deserve to feel cherished. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, keep softening into love.